Hello ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to see you again in today's news program. Here, we and you will share and interact with the latest news and hottest events that are of interest to the public at home and abroad. Details will be available shortly.
On September 16, Polish authorities identified a Ukrainian man and a Belarusian woman as being involved in the Fawa UAV crash. Gas Dobzynski, spokesman for Poland's Ministry of Special Services, said the individuals were identified as a 21-year-old Ukrainian man and a 17-year-old Belarusian woman. Investigators reportedly searched their homes while police were verifying their identities and legal status in Poland. Dobzynski played down speculation that this was some kind of large-scale espionage operation but said it was too early to confirm any other details. He said they were young people, perhaps out of recklessness, perhaps out of ignorance, perhaps because they wanted to make a film. The incident followed Vsav's earlier claim that at least 19 Russian UAVs had entered Polish airspace last week. The accusations, which Russia's envoy to the UN Security Council, Vasily Nebia, dismissed as baseless. Moscow countered that the accusations were motivated by what it called the European warring faction. It noted that the Russian UAVs deployed in Ukraine do not have the range to reach Polish territory.
According to the TASS news agency, on September 16, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the country is gradually abandoning the term unfriendly countries, emphasizing that Russia only has tensions with certain governments, not entire countries. The statement was made by Mr. Lavrov while speaking at a press conference on preparations for the upcoming Intervision contest. Here, he was asked about what artists from unfriendly countries need to do to participate. In the context of the expected participation of representatives from both the US and Europe, the foreign minister explained that although the term unfriendly countries still appears in Russian law, President Vladimir Putin recently emphasized that Russia does not consider entire countries as adversaries, but only those whose governments act against Russia's interests. Mr. Lavrov also noted that he would not name individuals who were previously banned from participating in the contest, citing respect for their personal circumstances. However, he affirmed that artists wishing to participate in the Intervision competition will always be welcome in Russia. He expressed hope that Intervision will become an annual event and the host country of the next competition will be announced immediately after the final round. The list of unfriendly countries is a list published by the Russian government of countries considered to have acted unfriendly towards Russia. This list was first drawn up in May 2021 and only included 2 countries, the United States and the Republic of S. The list was later expanded to 56 countries and territories, and the European Union after these countries imposed sanctions on Russia for its military campaign in Ukraine from May 2022. In July 2022, the Russian government announced the addition of Greece, Slovenia, Slovakia, Croatia, and Denmark. All G7 countries and all 27 European Union member states are on this list. Countries included in the list are subject to a number of restrictions on relations with Russia, including trade and currency restrictions and limits on the recruitment of staff in their diplomatic missions in Russia. The legal basis for imposing sanctions on countries deemed unfriendly, issued since June 2018, includes measures such as import and export restrictions, suspension or termination of international cooperation or privatization of state assets, but has not specified the targets. When the US and the Republic of Serbia were added to the list in April 2021, Russia limited the number of local staff the 2 countries could hire at their diplomatic missions in Russia. The Republic of Serbia embassy was limited to 19 Russian staff, while the US embassy was not allowed to hire anyone. In May 2022, in retaliation for sanctions imposed on Russia after its military operation in Ukraine, Russia added 48 more countries to its list of unfriendly states. Creditors from countries on the list, if they want to receive payments, are forced to open special accounts at a Russian bank to receive money in dong instead of other international currencies. In addition, all new business agreements between Russian companies and organizations from countries on the list must be approved by a government commission. According to Western media, an Italian court has just decided to extradite Ukrainian citizen S.E. Hike to Germany on suspicion of being involved in the sabotage of the Nord Stream gas pipeline. CK was arrested in Italy last month. German authorities believe that this subject is an accomplice in the attack on the system, which is the pipeline that transports Russian gas to Europe. A series of underwater explosions in 2022 caused severe damage to both the Nord Stream 1 and 2 systems, rendering all 4 pipelines inoperable. Before the Russia-Ukraine conflict broke out, more than 50% of Germany's gas imports came from Russia, most of which passed through this pipeline system. Since the explosions occurred in offshore waters, relevant European countries such as Sweden, Denmark, and Germany jointly opened an investigation. In August 2024, Germany closed the initial investigation and issued an arrest warrant for Volodymyr Zed. The Ukrainian citizen was considered the ringleader. He was allegedly living in Poland and had chartered a yacht named Kai Duk to carry out the attack. Shike was suspected of being one of his close accomplices. For its part, the Ukrainian government has vehemently denied any involvement in the incident. Shk's lawyer said he would appeal the extradition decision to the Italian Supreme Court.
After being sentenced to 27 years in prison by the Supreme Court, former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro had to go to the hospital twice for health monitoring. Senator Flávio Bolsonaro, son of former President Bolsonaro, said his father experienced successive severe water attacks on the 16th, causing him to stop breathing for nearly 10 seconds. This was followed by severe vomiting. The former Brazilian president was then taken to the hospital. Mr. Flávio said he was stable but did not look well. Guards also appeared at the hospital. Mrs. Michelle Bolsonaro, his wife, said her husband had been given medication. The former president had to stay in the hospital overnight for further monitoring. This is the second time the former Brazilian president has been hospitalized since the Brazilian Supreme Court sentenced him and 7 accomplices for crimes of participating in an armed criminal organization, organizing a coup d'état seeking to abolish the democratic system by violence and destruction of state property. Mr. Bolsonaro was sentenced to 27 years and 3 months in prison. Mr. Bolsonaro's lawyers said they would appeal. He does not have to serve his sentence until the appeal is completed. The former Brazilian president has repeatedly denied all allegations related to the riots. He has been under house arrest at his residence in the capital Brasilia since early August for violating a ban on publicly threatening officials. After being convicted, Mr. Bolsonaro went to the hospital on the 14th to treat skin lesions and submit a biopsy sample. Private Dr. Claudio Pirolini said the former Brazilian leader was quite weak and had mild anemia, seemingly due to poor nutrition over the past month. He has undergone many surgeries in recent years due to complications from a stab wound to the abdomen in 2018 while campaigning for president. His lawyers cited health issues as the reason for his absence during the trial. While awaiting the appeal results, Mr. Bolsonaro's allies in Congress also pushed for an amnesty order so that he would not have to go to prison. In the 2022 election, Mr. Bolsonaro lost to opponent Lula da Silva with a vote difference of 50.9% and 49.1%, the closest margin in modern Brazilian history. Mr. Bolsonaro did not concede defeat but also did not hinder the process of transferring power to Mr. Lula. A week after Mr. Lula took office, protesters supporting Mr. Bolsonaro marched in Brasilia and stormed the Brazilian Congress building, the Supreme Court, and the presidential palace to cause riots and destruction. Security forces then suppressed the rioting crowd, arresting about 1,500 people. Taylor Robinson, the suspect in the assassination of a prominent conservative activist in the U.S., Chico's, has been indicted on a series of charges including aggravated murder. According to prosecutor Jeff Cray, the suspect is also charged with shooting causing serious injury, obstruction of justice, 2 counts of witness tampering, and committing a violent crime in front of a child. Mr. Kay said prosecutors had considered applying the death penalty to Robinson. The suspect will continue to be held without bail. The next hearing is scheduled for the 29th. Robinson is expected to have a lawyer at that time. Robinson, 22, is accused of shooting and assassinating prominent conservative activist Chuck C., an ally of U.S. President Donald Trump, while he was giving a speech at a university in Utah on the 20th. Robinson was arrested on the evening of the 11th after his father recognized him in photos released by authorities. The suspect's father also believed that the rifle police suspected the shooter used matched the rifle he had given to his son. Therefore, he contacted his son to clarify the matter. Court documents state that when his father called, Robinson implied that he was the shooter and said that he could not go to prison and just wanted to end everything. Robinson's parents then asked their son why he committed the crime. The suspect replied that there was too much evil and too much hatred. The suspect's parents then urged Robinson to talk to a family friend, a deputy sheriff, who persuaded him to surrender. The hatred Robinson referred to is not yet clear. However, investigators noted that Robinson's mother told them her son had started a relationship with his roommate, who was transitioning and becoming more politically left-leaning, becoming more supportive of gay and transgender rights. Robinson allegedly told his roommate that he had had enough of the hatred. On the day of the shooting, the roommate received a message from Robinson saying to stop what you're doing and look under my keyboard. The roommate found a note under Robinson's keyboard that read, "I had a chance to take down and lick and I'm going to do it." After the shooting, Pham continued to text the roommate, "I've had enough of his hatred. Some hatred is non-negotiable." Robinson's roommate asked him how long he had planned the attack, and he replied a little over a week. Robinson also shared with his roommate that he would confess. Court documents do not show the relevance of those positions or whether the suspect's statements on these issues were a factor in the assassination. Investigators are continuing to evaluate evidence, including examining electronic devices that the suspect may have used. The situation on the Russia-Ukraine battlefield is extremely tense, especially as Kyiv announced a mandatory evacuation order for settlements in the Zaporizhzhia region. This decision is believed to be related to impending dramatic developments. The Military Summary Channel reported that Ukrainian local authorities have announced a mandatory evacuation order for villages and towns in the Zaporizhzhia region, within the operational area of the Russian Vostok Group of forces. This indicates that, first and foremost, the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian armed forces, General Alexander Syrsky, is preparing at least to stabilize the front and at most for a counteroffensive. In 2023, Ukrainian forces launched a major counteroffensive in this same area. If not for the strong Surovikin defense line, Russia would not have been able to stop this lightning strike. However, the problem is that General Syrsky is planning a new counteroffensive when the situation on the Pokrovsk front is not yet fully stable. This could lead to major difficulties for their entire defense system. Operations are also at their highest level. On May 16th, there were reports that Russian troops had recaptured Andrivka and Klishchivka, and the 8th Army Group is being moved by Russia towards Dnipropetrovsk to support the 51st Army Group immediately after Ukrainian forces broke through from the Shakhtarsk direction. Previously, General Syrsky had dismissed the commanders of the 17th and 20th Army Corps due to heavy defeats leading to the loss of positions in the areas of responsibility of these large units on the Zaporizhzhia, Donbass, and Dnipropetrovsk fronts. This highlights Russia's successes in the aforementioned regions. The 17th Corps was stationed in the Zaporizhzhia region, where Ukrainian forces fell in Kamenskoye and lost part of Plavny village on the banks of the Dnieper River. The 20th Corps defended southern Donbass at the border of the Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk regions, adjacent to Zaporizhzhia, where Moscow's forces are making deep breakthroughs into Dnipropetrovsk. These are the first personnel changes after Kyiv's forces switched to a corps-based command system, signaling that the deck has been shuffled. The Radovka channel provided more details about the dismissal of the two high-ranking commanders. Specifically, the failures on the southern front forced Kyiv to revert to its old plan. They are trying to revive the situation through personnel changes. In both directions, Ukrainian forces fell at long-established fortified defense lines. On the ground, on the Zaporizhzhia front, Russian assault units have currently broken through the enemy's defense line in the Stepnohersk subdistrict. This is key to a future attack on the regional capital. Additionally, Russian troops are increasing their presence in Primorsk village, adjacent to Stepnohersk. The units in the city of Zaporizhzhia are truly threatened, and the only reason the checkmate has not yet materialized is because the Moscow command is focusing on other areas. The Kyiv command hopes that changing the commander of the 17th Corps will allow them to buy time and prolong the existence of the garrison group in Stepnohersk. Another factor is the unsuccessful attempt to use a temporary fire brigade to deploy assault units of the 225th and 425th Independent Assault Regiments to the 17th Corps. Their involvement only temporarily eased the situation but at the cost of enormous losses. According to the Venker Kotnak channel, fierce fighting is taking place in the Minokratsk concentration area. Thus, the latest developments show that Russia's offensive into the city has had some success but is not truly sustainable. At one point, they had to retreat due to fierce counterattacks by Ukrainian forces, and now Russian troops are trying to penetrate deep once again. The stalemate continues, with neither side gaining overwhelming superiority. The central combat units of the Russian army are engaged in fierce fighting around the car market in central Por, advancing into the western part of the city, north of the cemetery near Togov Street, and the transport department in the east from Lazny district. Russian troops moved through Juni district and reached Chkalov Street, advancing along it towards the Pioneer Palace after fierce fighting erupted in the Chunashino area. At the same time, battles are also taking place in the eastern suburbs of Minokrat, Bagan, and Maskovsky. Ukrainian forces have secured the tree lines north of Lake Dan Novo Economic Chioi and Mine. Russian forces are attacking and pushing the enemy out of there. Fighting is still ongoing in the northwest of Kast-Lyman settlement, as well as in the central, eastern, and northern areas of Rodanskoye. The Prokayef military analysis channel TQ claims that the front line near Doproilier has attracted the most public attention for a long time. Hundreds of posts, 90% of which are meaningless, have been created on the X platform recently, describing large cauldrons of various sizes and shapes, where thousands of Russian soldiers are supposedly trapped. This is also a battlefield with strange manipulations, including the Dipset channel linked to Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Directorate GUR regarding their maps. The following are the most interesting events that have taken place in this front area since the 15th, when Ukrainian forces recaptured the Zolot-Kolodyasev Seal area and pushed the enemy back from the new Donbass road. In the past month, the fiercest fighting in the so-called Dupropilier salient did not take place in the Kivia, Sacho, or Panipka areas, but from the very beginning, it took place in the Venus-No-Sea area. From the 16th to the 17th, both of these villages were the main focus of Ukraine's counteroffensive, conducted with the aim of closing the Russian gap in their positions. Interestingly, no one on the Ukrainian side except TQ wrote anything about the direction of Ukraine's counteroffensive, and this issue was kept secret, although there was generally something for Ukrainian forces to be proud of. Along the Hanivka-Venus-No-Sacho axis, units of the 1st Azov Corps of the Ukrainian National Guard, possibly supported by the 1st Da Vinci Assault Regiment, attacked there. Another notable point is the approximate marking of the attack axis of the forces on the map of the Defense Forces. Was included in the update on the 15th. In contrast, Sentinel's analysis clearly shows that a real attack by Ukrainian forces there only began on the 16th to 17th, i.e. after the update. It seems they marked Ukrainian gains before actual offensive operations began. On the map, TQ marked the timeline of the Ukrainian National Guard's advances from September 14th to 16th. This is based on Centino's analysis. The National Guard began counterattack operations in the Vin-Now-Sacho area on the 16th or 17th. The fighting was conducted along two axes, Hipka-Vine and Hanivka-No-Sacho, but operations on the second axis were quickly cancelled. Whether KF forces then managed to penetrate west of No-Sacho, as the state showed in the update on the 15th, remains an open question. In the following days, Ukrainian forces only continued their attack on the Venius area. This village was recaptured by them on the 20th. After recapturing Venus, the Ukrainian National Guard led an attack from the 22nd to the 27th to clear Russian positions in individual residential buildings north of Nosach as well as the center of the village. Ukrainian forces developed a second attack axis towards the clay pit. The attack along the first axis brought them partial success. Recapturing Nosacho on the 24th to 25th, however, Ukraine did not control the positions of the Russian enemy in the individual residential buildings. By controlling Nosacho, the KF forces had the opportunity to develop along the Nosacho-Se route, and as a result, from the 26th to the 28th of the month, they temporarily cut off the Moscova forces in the Kucherivia area at the same time. Offensive operations along the second axis helped Ukrainian forces control the southern part of WK Banka and advance approximately 1 kilometer west of the clay mine. However, the Ukrainian army remained stuck there. Around early September, the offensive potential of the 1st Azov Corps, which was conducting operations in the Vine-Now-Sakhu area, was exhausted, and the Moskva forces launched counterattacks. These actions led to the Russian army recapturing Nosakhu and liberating Russian forces in the Korypia area from September 5th to September 9th. From September 12th to September 14th, Ukrainian National Guard units continued offensive operations in the clay mine area, finally reaching and controlling its southern part. In summary, the stalemate continues, with Kiev forces gaining an advantage at times and vice versa. After initial rapid successes, the Russian side has now slowed down and is gradually regaining the initiative. Therefore, the oil slicks that Ukrainian media have been eagerly discussing have not truly formed. Meanwhile, Ukraine Brada reported that the evening report of September 16th from the General Staff of Tamina stated that a total of 148 combat clashes occurred. 1 missile was launched, 47 airstrikes were conducted, and 69 guided bombs were dropped. In addition, they deployed 2,113 kamikaze UAVs and carried out 3,308 artillery attacks. The Ukraine General Staff confirmed that Ukrainian forces basically blocked enemy infiltration attempts in Slobodansky, Vakis, Kubians, Lyman, Silvers, Kramatis, Torres, Pogrops, Novoplops, Gulai Polier, Oryov, and the Dnipro. In an interview with Sky News, President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Kiev forces had blocked 3 Russian offensive operations, but the enemy was planning 2 more major operations. He stated, "The mood in Europe and the US has really changed a bit. Overall, I am very happy, truly delighted. Russia is planning 2 more powerful offensive operations than before. Their 3 most recent operations have failed." Leader Zelensky added that Russia suffered heavy casualties and a large amount of weapons were destroyed, and now they are very tense. At the same time, according to Mr. Zelensky, Kiev forces need support with weapons and financial aid for weapon production, and then they will be able to withstand 2 more enemy offensive operations.
On September 16th, Datrin quoted Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Rabkov as praising U.S. President Donald Trump's approach to the Ukraine conflict. Rabkov said that President Trump has taken a common-sense approach to resolving the situation in Ukraine. The summit in Alaska has created the necessary foundation for the dialogue process. Although Moscow does not agree with all of Washington's proposals, however, the Russian diplomat said that the peace process is lacking progress due to the obstruction of some European leaders. He added that U.S. efforts are being overwhelmed by a group of warmongers who cannot accept the fact that victory over a nuclear power is impossible. "I hope that the noise from Europe will not overwhelm the common sense from Washington." Regarding the possibility of holding a Russia-Ukraine-U.S. summit, Rabkov affirmed that the event cannot take place until the KF gives a reasonable response to Moscow's proposals. On the same day, U.S. Treasury Secretary Skobin said the conflict in Ukraine could end within 60 to 90 days if Europe imposed tariffs on Russian oil imports. He stressed that Europe needs to play a more active role in cutting off Russian oil revenues and helping to end the conflict in Ukraine. "We expect them to do their part. The U.S. will not act if Europe is silent."
During a meeting with members of the United Russia Party in the State Duma on March 16, Deputy Chairman of the Russian Security Council, Medvedev, announced the federal budget for 2026. Accordingly, the plan will focus on the military sector. According to Mr. Medvedev, the new budget is built to realize the goals set by President Vladimir Putin and the ruling party, with the 2 top priorities being defense spending and support for those participating in the military operation in Ukraine. Notably, among the nearly 700 initiatives of the United Russia Party that have been passed into law, there are 140 laws directly related to the policy of supporting veterans. Previously, the General Assembly of the Ministry of Information signed the federal budget law for 2025 and the period 2026 to 2027. According to the plan, Russia's GDP growth during this period is expected to reach 2.5 to 2.8%, with total revenue of about 125,000 billion rubles and an estimated budget deficit of 6,000 billion rubles.